An exciting turn of events indeed.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth continues the work of its predecessor, which means it not only recreates the original 1997 classic with modern graphics and gameplay, but it also makes substantial changes to the story. Interestingly, Rebirth isn't quite as radical as Final Fantasy VII Remake was, and for much of its runtime is a mostly faithful adaptation of what you remember. But the closer you get to the end, the bigger the rewrites become. Ahead lies the 7 biggest changes, which naturally means huge spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the original game. Watch on at your own risk.
Just as worlds unite, so too do they part.
In the original Final Fantasy VII, the Black Materia is a mysterious, ancient magical orb that's capable of summoning Meteor, a spacefaring rock that can destroy planets. Very little is known of its origin, but its destructive powers are revealed in a mural when the party visits the Temple of the Ancients. Rebirth partly reimagines the Black Materia, giving it a full origin story. It was created by the Gi, the undead tribe that haunts the tunnels beneath Cosmo Canyon. In a brand new sequence for Rebirth, the leader of the tribe, Gi Natak, takes you to his village, where it is revealed that the Gi have been living in a restless purgatory for centuries.
The Gi cannot rest until our sacred treasure has been restored to us.
In the world of Final Fantasy VII, your spirit is created by the Lifestream and returns to it when you die. Unfortunately for them, the Gi are not born of the Lifestream. It's never explained where they originally came from, but their outsider status means they cannot return to the Lifestream and thus are trapped as ghosts for eternity. In an effort to release them from their curse, the Gi developed a materia that turned black with pain and spite. They planned to use it to summon a meteor that would obliterate both themselves and the planet that held them hostage. In short, absolute nothingness is better than a tortured eternity of undeath.
Only you can end our torment.
Before the Gi could use the Black Materia, Aerith's ancestors, the Cetra, stole it and locked it away in the Temple of the Ancients. Gi Natak asks Cloud and his friends to retrieve the Black Materia for him, and while they agree to his request, they only do so in the aim of keeping it away from both the Gi and Sephiroth.
Whatever that materia is, we can't let them have it. No matter how much they want it.
Rebirth introduces 4 new characters to the party: Yuffie, Cait Sith, Cid Highwind, and Vincent Valentine. If you've played the original, only Cait Sith will be introduced in the same way you remember. This time around, Yuffie is not randomly found wandering the world's forests. Instead, she washes up on the beach at Junon Harbor, with her early moments replacing the CPR scenes with Priscilla from the original game. Yuffie made her way to Junon with the aim of assassinating Rufus Shinra, and her attempts to do so happens as part of Rufus's military parade.
Stop!
Cid is also met in an entirely different part of the world. In the original game, he's recruited from his home in Rocket Town, where a disagreement with Shinra turns into an explosive escape. But in Rebirth, the party never goes to Rocket Town. Instead, Cid is depicted as a pilot for hire.
Happy trails to you!
Summoned by sending up a smoke signal at Gongaga Airfield, Cid's initial role is as a fast travel system, flying you from location to location in the tiny Bronco. Later, he pledges himself to the party after revealing that he once met Aerith's biological mother, Ilfana. Upset to learn that she died, Cid agrees to help Aerith in any way she needs.
So when you're ready, I'll be here.
Finally, we have Vincent, who does still remain locked in the Shinra Mansion basement, but is this time met when the party seeks out a computer terminal that will reveal the location of the Temple of the Ancients. Vincent agrees to help, but when the group stumbles across Professor Hojo's old reunion lab equipment, he forcibly steps in to stop them.
I don't recall giving you permission to go in there.
And by forcibly, I mean he transforms into Goliath Beast, the werewolf-like monster that was his limit break in the original game. After being defeated, Vincent is convinced to tag along with the party because of his past association with Sephiroth and Shinra.
You said that Sephiroth is your foe. I have a history with him. Unfinished business.
Throughout the game, visions of Sephiroth try to convince Cloud that Tifa is an imposter. This all comes to a head at Gongaga Reactor, where a tormented Cloud lashes out at Tifa, believing that she is a manifestation of Genova. He tries to kill her, but Tifa manages to dodge backwards and escape the reach of his sword. While Tifa survives Cloud's attempt on her life, she instead falls into the reactor's lake of liquid Mako. She's then swallowed whole by a weapon, one of the whale-like protectors of the planet. Trapped inside the weapon's huge materia-like belly, she watches as it swims through the lifestream. On the journey, she experiences visions from the past, including memories of her childhood conversation with Cloud, where she made him promise to save her. This is all very similar to a sequence from the original game, but it took place much later when Cloud was recovering in Medial. The sequence ends with Tifa watching a vision of Sephiroth guiding Cloud away from her, foreshadowing the villain's grip over her friend. The weapon eventually resurfaces at Gongaga Reactor and, surrounded by Whispers, releases Tifa. The suggestion is that, much like when Barrett was killed and resurrected by Whispers in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's not Tifa's time to go yet.
Hey, Tifa, stay with us.
In the original Final Fantasy VII, Aerith had no idea of the death that awaited her at the Forgotten Capital. But in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it was suggested that Aerith was able to see the future. Rebirth reinforces this, and reveals that Red 13 also had the ability to see the future too, provided you take him on a date at the Gold Saucer. However, since leaving Midgar, both Red 13 and Aerith have lost their ability to see what's ahead.
Whatever we had, I think the Whispers took it from us when we left. Seems Arbiters of Fate can do whatever they want.
But how could Aerith and Red 13 see the future, and why can't they now? The answer seems to be Aerith's white materia. In the original game, this special orb was used to summon Holy, a protective magic that can defend the entire planet. In Rebirth, Red 13 explains that materia is formed of knowledge and memories, and so it seems that the white materia is the vessel for Aerith's visions of the future. Red 13 was presumably also able to tap into those visions, perhaps as a result of the time he spent at the spiritual retreat of Cosmo Canyon. The problem is that by the events of Rebirth, the white materia is no longer white. It's colourless and empty. The memories are gone, and thus so is the power to call holy. Those memories were taken by the Whispers. Last year, Square Enix confirmed that each time the Whispers touched Aerith in Remake, they stole away another memory. By the time the Whisper Harbinger had been defeated, every one of her future memories had been taken away, leaving her none the wiser of her fate. In Rebirth's final chapter, Cloud is taken to a new reality where he meets an alternative version of Aerith who has her own working white materia. She tells him, "Whatever happens, don't blame yourself," clearly demonstrating that this Aerith also knows of her fate thanks to her materia.
Here. Take it.
She gives her orb to Cloud and sends him back to his reality, allowing him to reunite his Aerith with a working white materia, those future memories, and the power to call holy. Sephiroth's plan in the original game was to ascend to godhood via absorbing the lifestream. While he still seems pretty set on that ascension in the remake trilogy, Rebirth reveals that his master plan also involves conquering the multiverse via something called Reunion. Reunion is not a new thing for Final Fantasy VII fans, but in the original game, it referred to the reunion of Genova's cells. In Rebirth, it refers to Sephiroth orchestrating the convergence of many different worlds or realities. He calls this a homecoming, and when it begins, he says their joining is a confluence of worlds and emotions. It seems then that the mass collection of both realities and the emotions of those who live within them is important to Sephiroth's overall plan. And since he still wants the Black Materia, it seems pretty obvious that mass destruction of not just one world but many is on his bucket list.
At last, the time has come.
In the original Final Fantasy VII, Aerith was killed by Sephiroth at the Forgotten Capital. However, the final cutscene implied that her spirit lived on in the lifestream, and that she was able to protect the planet from Meteor from there. This idea has been kept for Rebirth, but it is presented in a very different way. Aerith still dies by Sephiroth's sword, but her spiritual form lives on and can directly communicate with Cloud, although sadly, the rest of the party are unaware of her presence. In the final cutscene, Aerith promises Cloud that she will stop the meteor, a clear nod to the original game's finale.
I'll put everything I've got into my prayers. I'll stop the meteor.
While Aerith's fate is only somewhat different to the original game's version, what we see of Zack is very different. He outright died in the original, of course, but the creation of multiple realities in the remake trilogy means that Zack lives on in different worlds of the multiverse. We actually see multiple different versions of Zack across Rebirth, in worlds separate from the main reality our heroes live in. At the very end of the game though, the Zack that fights in the final battle ponders on something Sephiroth told him, that worlds unite and part. He wonders if that means that worlds can reunite a second time. The implication, or at least the hope, is that Zack's reality will unite with a world where he can live happily with alternate versions of Aerith and Cloud, as the ones in his reality appear to be terminally sick.
So this is it, huh? Time to say goodbye. For now.
The original version of Final Fantasy VII briefly established that Yuffie's home of Wutai was once at war with Shinra. The remake trilogy has expanded on that, and it becomes a notable secondary plot point in Rebirth. There's currently a ceasefire arrangement between Wutai and Shinra, but Glenn Lodbrok, a former soldier who defected to Wutai, is attempting to stoke the fires of war again and destroy both Shinra and Midgar. In a public address, he claims that Shinra has massacred Wutai soldiers, a situation he almost certainly engineered to increase tensions, and also falsely blames the emergence of the weapons on the company.
We are ready to march.
In the finale, it is revealed that Glenn is actually a puppet of Sephiroth, and that the attempts to reignite the Shinra vs Wutai war is a ploy to distract Rufus. Sephiroth does not speak plainly about why he's doing this, but he does say our promised land will become a reality. Based on this, it's logical to assume he's trying to divert Rufus's attention away from his goal of discovering the promised land. In the original Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth sought the promised land as it was a place where he could absorb the mass amounts of Mako energy required to use the Black Materia and cast Meteor. Meanwhile, the late President Shinra hoped to find it and use its energy to build Neo Midgar. We know Rebirth's version of Rufus still hopes to complete his father's work, and it makes sense that this version of Sephiroth still requires the energy. Thus, if Rufus is distracted by a war with Wutai, then Sephiroth can more easily beat him in the race to the Promised Land.
How very astute.
And those are the 7 biggest changes Rebirth makes to Final Fantasy VII's story. For more, check out our Final Fantasy VII Rebirth review, as well as our breakdown of how long it takes to complete it. And for everything else, stick with IGN.